The ocean is a vast, unwavering force that has the power to drown entire civilizations, capsize ships, and house a multitude of species, both small and great, while at the same time providing pleasant scenery for children to build sandcastles next to and for people to fall in love.
Aww.
As of 2023, humans have only explored 5% of the world's ocean and mapped 24.9% of the seafloor using high-resolution technology. That means that 95% of the ocean is still unknown. That unknown is partly to blame for humankind's apparent uneasiness with the ocean for the entirety of our history. The other part's due to the ocean's ability to show us just how small we are in comparison to that dark blue world where anything could be lurking in its depths. Come with us to learn more on this episode about Thalassophobia, Country Roads Creeps.
That was so good.
Thank you.
Good job.
You didn't say Country Roads Creeps with me, though, so we should probably...
Because you didn't give me the setup that we've done in every single episode.
No, I changed it. I changed it on this one.
Yeah. That's okay, though. That was good. You captured my attention.
Great. I just got a notification from our favorite source.
Reddit?
Yeah. From the subreddit Thalassophobia.
Nice.
So, not that I've been browsing or anything.
Right.
Or do you want to say anything before we start? Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Country Roads Creeps. And you can send us messages and tell us other things you want us to cover in the future.
Yeah. I'm excited for this episode. I say that every time, but I am. The ocean is scary. It's cool and it's fun to go look at it, but it is spooky.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you'll just be standing in it and then something touches your foot and you don't know what it was. You get freaked out.
Turns out it was an old man.
Ew.
That's almost worse than like a shark.
Yeah, and you said only 5% of it has been discovered? Or explored?
5% has been explored either by, people going down there or sending robots down.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Or cameras or something to see what's down there.
That's why I say, for sure sea monsters exist. Yeah. We've only looked at 5% of it. For sure there's something else in there.
There was, from what I saw, it was only it's 24.9% has been mapped by, high-resolution technology is what, according to Google. But it basically, LiDAR and, sonar scanning and stuff like that. I was under the impression that it was more than that. I thought that I had seen something about they had mapped they had sonared the entire thing and just kind of had a rough guess of what's basically the landscape. But maybe that's not, maybe the 25% is just what they know kind of exactly what it sort of looks like with the higher resolution radars and sonars and stuff. So, you wanna start?
Start your episode for you?
No, do you wanna? Not do you want to start? But
yes.
Are we ready to start?
Yes,
okay.
Yes. I thought you were asking if Hannah, wanted to start this episode.
Do you want to read my notes? Because I can promise you that for the first few pages, it's very legible.
Right.
The second half is very much like me doing some real creative work on the English language.
That's so funny. I'd have to translate.
So this episode, like I said, is on thalassophobia. Thalassophobia is an intense phobia or fear of large or deep water, not to be confused with aquaphobia or hydrophobia. Aquaphobia is an irrational and extreme fear of water that can cause intense anxiety, panic, or fear when someone sees, hears, touches, thinks about, or talks about water. So somebody somewhere is listening to this podcast
They've already turned it off.
Yeah, already didn't even click. So
no, they saw the title and said no. Aquaphobia, that's wild. You have to drink water.
Yeah.
And you just be scared while you do it.
if you have aquaphobia, are you scared of Dr. Pepper?
That's a good question. There is water in Dr.
Lemonade
Pepper.
or...
But you have to have some water at some point.
Yeah, I guess.
Crazy.
Anyway, people with aquaphobia may avoid bodies of water such as pools, bathtubs, lakes, and oceans, or even feel anxious about being around just any kind of water. So, many people that have the aquaphobia have had a traumatic experience with water.
Oh, so that makes sense.
There was, I remember when I was a little kid and I would go to this kind of like, it was like a daycare at this lady's house, and she would turn on like a true crime show. And I was kind of like old enough at the time to see like the true crime, like murdery kind of stuff. There were some kind of intense ones that she was like, we're not going to watch this. But
right.
I was always really interested in like the people on the run and like the FBI most wanted, like murderers and stuff and bank robbers or whatever. So, but there was one I remember specifically. This girl was, they found this girl and she like had amnesia or something, and they never found out like what happened to her, but she was incredibly scared of water, any kind of like body of water, any bigger than like a glass. And it was because she had, like, I guess the guy had like drowned her and like left her
so sad.
by a river.
Right. So she had like PTSD from that.
Yeah. So it was kind of nuts. But anyway, hydrophobia is similar, but is historically used in reference to the rabies symptoms.
Oh, yeah. Where like your body won't let you drink water.
Yeah.
You start choking and stuff.
I actually looked into that. And rabies is probably something that we'll have to do, like if we ever do certain kinds of episodes, because rabies is a kind of nasty disease. But I was wondering why rabies specifically does hydrophobia to you. And it's because they're not sure exactly what the mechanism is that it alters in your brain, but the theory that's leading right now, I guess, is that because rabies is spread by your saliva, that's where the virus kind of lives. It won't let you drink water because it doesn't want you to dilute the virus.
That makes sense.
Because once it gets to your brain, you're done for. So that's actually one of the other things that I learned was that you can, if you get the rabies, you kind of immediately have to go to the doctor and get the vaccine or get treatment, because as soon as you show symptoms,
you're toast.
It's like a 99% death rate.
Yeah.
And if you start showing symptoms, you're pretty much done for if the first kind of treatment doesn't work and you keep getting worse, you're done for. They can do another treatment, but the people that have undergone that treatment have had some really serious,
really low success
brain damage. Yeah. They're basically not even close to being actually alive.
If you get bit by an animal, you're supposed to just go get the rabies vaccine anyway.
Yeah. So you heard it here first on Country Roads Creeps.
Get bit by something, get the rabies vaccine.
Yeah. Aphobia, just for knowledge of people listening, is an uncontrollable, irrational, and lasting fear of a certain object, situation, or activity. Fear can be so overwhelming that a person may go to great lengths to avoid the source of this fear. Less intense symptoms of a phobia could be like an elevated heart rate or feeling of uneasiness. You could get cold sweats, or there can be some more intense responses like panic attacks or vomiting and fainting, or like total complete meltdown. So, I did look up, because phobia, people say it's not just a fear, it's an uncontrollable, irrational fear. And I think some of them are pretty rational, honestly.
Yeah, for sure.
Put that one out there. Like, I've never known anybody that's like afraid of snakes and I don't get it. Like,
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But,
and like the arachnophobia with spiders. Some spiders can really, really mess you up. So like the healthy fear. I guess if you have it so severely that you can't even go outside because you're afraid of a snake or a spider, that's kind of a problem. But yeah, some snakes and some spiders you should be afraid of.
Yeah. Which, what's funny with that is I'm not necessarily scared of like snakes, like I don't mind snakes really at all. Now obviously like if I see a copperhead or rattlesnake or something, I'm not going to go near it. I'd just start blasting.
Oh my gosh.
Unload.
Just go the opposite direction.
So there's actually the previous episode I mentioned that we're, well, not we are, but me and some buddies are members at a private range that's super remote. Mm-hmm. They have big eastern like timber rattlers or whatever over there. And they found like 6 or 7 foot timber rattlers over there. I didn't even know they could get that big. I knew there are some species of rattlesnake that can get pretty huge, but I thought timber rattlers were usually pretty small for... Yeah. This isn't a rattlesnake episode anyway.
Did I tell you about the time I almost headbutted a copperhead on accident?
No.
Okay, so I was at the lake with my dad, and he was fishing, and I had got out to swim, and then I had to go to the bathroom, so I was going to go up in the woods, and so I was swimming over to the bank, and he said, watch out for snakes. And I thought he was just messing with me, like playing a joke. He was not. And so the water was kind of low. So when I got to the bank, I had to like reach up to pull myself up onto the rock to get up out of the water. Yeah. And when I pulled myself up and like landed on my stomach, I was staring straight face to face to a copperhead that was sunbathing on the rock. And I went and just like pushed myself backwards into the water and landed on my back and swam back to the boat.
And suddenly you didn't have to use the bathroom anymore.
Nope, it was gone. And my dad was like, what? And I said, there's a copperhead over there. He said, I told you to look out. I said, no, I thought you were messing with me. And he was like, no. And so that was spooky.
You've seen the video that came out kind of recently. This guy was hiking in this park and he felt something like nick him on the leg.
Oh no.
And he looked down and there's a copperhead sitting there. Like I guess he stepped on it.
Oh no.
And that copperheads blend in super well to the
they're like impossible to see.
So I'm sure people have seen the pictures where people are like, find the copperheads, and you're looking and you're like,
and there'll be like 6 of them in the picture, and you just cannot find them until they're circled in red or something. Yeah. I saw one of those actually a few days ago. It's funny you bring that up.
Copperheads are super, super well camouflaged, and luckily they're not incredibly dangerous to grown people.
Yeah.
Kids are really at risk, and some animals, but
if you can get out quick enough, you're probably okay.
If you go seek medical treatment pretty soon, you're going to be pretty good. There's actually, or like if you go to one of those churches, then they get bit by snakes all the time and
don't
have any problems. So
wait, so was the guy okay in the video you saw?
Yeah, so he stopped and he was like, "Oh, there's a copperhead there," and it's kind of like comically calm of him to be like, "There's a copperhead, huh?" And you can kind of hear him breathing. He's like, I need to like calm myself down. And there's people like walking on he's like, hey, watch out. There's a copperhead here.
And it just bit me.
And so somebody ran to get rangers. And this is an area, I think it's more further north, outside of where copperheads usually are at. And the rangers came by and the guy goes, well, congratulations. You're the first guy in 25 years to be bitten by a copperhead here.
Oh, no.
And he's like, cool, can you take me to the hospital?
Right, yeah.
And they're like, yeah, let's load you up.
That's good that he stayed calm. That's the best thing you can do, not get your heart rate up. Can you take me to the hospital?
Yeah, so it's a kind of a funny video, just the way everybody's acting.
Yeah.
But that's kind of where like the sort of like the park ranger humor kind of comes in a little bit.
Yeah.
Like he's like, congratulations. You're the first guy in 25 years to be bitten by a copperhead. Woo-hoo. He's like, cool.
ER, please.
Yeah. So anyway, I did look up the most common phobias. Top 5 is arachnophobia.
I want to guess one.
Okay, go ahead.
The one that is afraid of clowns.
No.
Man, I thought for sure that'd be top 5.
Want to take another guess?
Arachnophobia is my other one, so I don't know now.
Okay. Number 1 is arachnophobia, fear of spiders. Ophidiophobia, which is a fear of snakes. Glossophobia is the fear of public speaking. Acrophobia is the fear of heights. And social phobia is the fear of social interactions. I have
Wow.
2 of those.
I'm surprised social phobia is in the top 5 phobias.
Yeah.
Heights makes sense. Heights, spider,
You
snakes.
can guess which 2 I have. It's fear of heights and
The social one?
social interaction. Not really a fear. It's more of like a can't stand to be there.
Hates small talk.
So which is odd that we do a lot of small talk here. We're doing it right now.
This is different though.
Yeah.
This is amongst friends.
I was gonna say I don't really have the ophidiophobia, which is fear of snakes, or arachnophobia per se. Snakes I don't mind at all, really, unless they're like obviously dangerous. But like the black rat snakes and stuff that we have around here, all like whatever, who cares?
Yeah.
Garter snakes, like
They don't hurt you.
pick them up. Like even if they bite you, it's like not a big deal at all.
Right.
So, which some of them are kind of aggressive. Anyway, the arachnophobia thing is like, I don't really care about spiders like out in the wilderness, but if they're in the house and if they're
Not allowed.
it's like, I don't want them in here.
Yeah.
I don't mind like those little dust spiders or whatever, or like the little jumping spiders that are kind of cute. But like some of the big boys that are like, you're like, hey, you're not supposed to be around. Or if I'm paranoid about like the brown recluse because we have those
so
here.
scary. And the black widow.
Yeah.
I really don't like spiders. It used to be way worse when I was younger. I've worked through it a little bit.
Yeah.
But I still really, really don't like them.
Yeah. So
You gotta stay out of the house. You can live outside, not inside.
The thing I don't like about spiders is that when they crawl, it feels weird. Like on your skin, if they crawl on you.
Yeah.
Feels weird. And whenever like I've held snakes and stuff before, and that doesn't bother me at all. Like the feeling of like slimy, scaly snakes doesn't bother me. So I don't know if that's, which I have a thing with textures. So
Yeah. Snakes aren't really slimy though.
some of them are. They're like they've got like a little bit of a.
I held a black snake and it was not slimy.
Like slimy is not really the word. It's not like sticky slimy. It's like not like frog slimy.
Yeah. Smooth.
Yeah, smooth is better. It's like a glossy feeling almost.
Yeah.
More so.
I could agree with that.
Yeah. When I was a kid, I held lots of anacondas and stuff. So I like the zoo.
Where? Oh.
Yeah. So we went to this place and they had these snakes and they did the show and I got to hold a bunch of snakes. It was cool.
That is cool.
Yeah. So, and my mom was freaking out. She's like, oh.
Right, yeah.
I'm like, this is awesome. Cool. Anyway, back to the episode. For the thalassophobia itself, causes aren't super clear, could stem from some kind of trauma, either being involved in or witnessing a traumatic event, could stem from news coverage or movies and TV and video games, or just having an unrelated event cause trauma in or near water. Like, that doesn't necessarily have to do with the water itself, could trigger a fear of the water, or like a post-traumatic stress kind of reaction. But it's also been theorized that it's a human evolutionary response, that the underlying psychology of the phobias, the underlying psychology of the phobia is that water historically has symbolized, this is specifically talking about large bodies of water like the ocean, might symbolize the deep subconscious of humans. So actually, there's a guy, Martin Antony, who's a professor of psychology at the Toronto Metropolitan University, and he's a co-author of the anti-anxiety workbook, said that, quote, from an evolutionary perspective, it makes sense that humans would develop a tendency to fear and avoid deep water because of all the associated risks. We're essentially programmed through evolution to fear some situations, like heights, deep water, snakes, more easily than others, like flowers or teddy bears, end quote. So, which makes sense. You would
Yeah, it
naturally
does.
just have a reaction to things that you know to be more dangerous than,
Yeah, things that can harm you.
like, you might be scared of heights, like looking over the overlooks at a park or something, like on the rocks. Like, you don't want to crawl out on the rocks at me. But like,
You know, we did go to go to school with a girl that had a phobia of butterflies, though. She was
really,
terrified of butterflies.
what was
Yeah,
her first and last name?
I'll tell you off of the episode.
So,
Yeah, so I guess those do happen.
there's been a ton of stories about the sea. Pretty much every religion, which is probably a subject that we'll cover in the future, is like for stories that exist in almost every religion that are like, okay, well, this is definitely a historic event in humans that happened, like regardless of what you think about the
Right.
religions individually. But actually, in Judaism and Christianity, you've got these stories about the sea being a place of disaster and punishment. So Noah's Ark probably comes to mind, and even like to a certain extent, Jesus sleeping through the storm while they were on the boat. The Epic of Gilgamesh has a similar story to the Noah's Ark story. And actually, there's a bunch of flood stories throughout like every religion. And some guy was chosen to build a boat, and he took like all the animals aboard and saved the populations, basically.
I didn't realize that spread across so many different things.
Yeah, so there's like Noah's Ark, he took 2 of each animal, and I think the Epic of Gilgamesh, there was a flood, and he built a huge boat. I think there's one in Hinduism. There's one in, well, naturally there'd be one in Islam because it's the same as the Jewish story. So, but they're like, it's everywhere. So, that's kind of led archaeologists to be like, okay, there was definitely at some point either a global flood or a flood that covered at least a large extent of the world that they knew of at the time. So, anyway, in Greek mythology, the Odyssey depicts Odysseus' journey home following the Trojan War. It's a great story, by the way. It's one of my favorites. Anyway, at one point after the war, Odysseus is trying to get home, and he passes by the island of the Sirens, and he encounters Scylla and Charybdis. Scylla is a 6-headed monster who swallows 1 sailor for each head when ships pass by, and Charybdis is a massive whirlpool. So Odysseus does as he was instructed by Circe, and he kept close to the cliffside of Scylla's lair while they were watching. The crew was watching Charybdis on the other side of the ship, on the other side of the strait that they were going through. And Scylla's head swoops down and grabs 6 of the sailors, but they do make it out the other side, minus those 6, but the ship makes it out. So, there's actually a Trivium song that, if there's a heavy metal band, for those who don't know, I know we've got a lot of Swifties in chat, but the Trivium had an album a long time ago, 2012 or something like that, called Shogun, and they had a lot of songs on there that covered some Greek myths and stuff like that. So
Pretty cool.
one of the songs was Torn Between Scylla and Charybdis. So that was that album came out during like the peak of me learning and like playing guitar all the time. Like I spent like 6 hours a day playing guitar.
Yeah.
And I learned the entire album and every guitar part on the album. And yeah, so
That's pretty impressive.
that album is the reason that I bought a 7-string guitar, because every song on the album except for like one is played on the 7-string guitars.
Nice.
So anyway, there's a ton of other sea monsters and stories that we could get into. It's probably going to be the focus of an entire episode one of these days, like
Sea monsters. Sea
Maybe.
stories.
Like, I don't know. I don't want to cover sea monsters in the sense of like just like Loch Ness Monster type people.
Yeah.
But if we did like some of the ones that I might get into here in a second, is like they're more creepy, spooky.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Okay.
speaking of creepy, spooky, let's get back to Christianity and Judaism for a second. The Leviathan is one of them that shows up a few times. Leviathan comes from the Hebrew Leviathan, I think is the way you pronounce that. And it comes from the root, a Hebrew root word that means to twist, turn, or coil. It's mentioned a few times in the book of Job. After the suffering of Job, God is addressing him and saying, like, who can do all these things? Who can, like, he basically, it kind of reads like God is kind of scolding him, like, you know, were you there when I put all of creation on the pillars, and were you there when I made the oceans, and were you there when, you know, who can do all this stuff? And he gets into, and he says, he gets into behemoth and describes that as a large animal. And it's not really clear on the exact type, but God says he eats grass like an ox, and he has strong muscles, and his tail is stiff like cedar, and his bones are tubes of bronze, and his limbs are like bars of iron, and he is the first of the works. So he would be, and I guess what that would mean is like he was the first of any of the animals or creatures that God made.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me.
And then God says, can you draw out Leviathan with a fish hook, put a rope in his nose? Will he make pleas to you? Will he speak soft words, make a covenant with you to be his servant? Will you play with him as a bird? He has mighty strength. Who can open the doors to his face? Around his teeth is terror. His back is made of rows of shields shut up closely with a seal. I just lost my place. My scroll stopped working. So closely, no air can come between them. His sneeze flashes forth light. His eyes are like the eyelids of dawn. Out of his mouth go flaming torches. Out of his nostrils come forth smoke. His breath kindles coals, and flame comes forth from his mouth. Terror dances before him. His heart is as hard as stone. No sword, spear, or javelin can prevail against him. He counts iron as straw and bronze as rotten wood. His underparts are sharp like pot shards. He makes the deep boil like a pot. He leaves a shining wake behind him. You would think he is white-haired. On earth there is not his like, a creature without fear. He is king over all the sons of pride. Pretty creative description of a being. So in Isaiah chapter 27, speaking on basically the end of the world, says, in that day the Lord with his hard and great and strong sword will punish Leviathan, the fleeing serpent, Leviathan, the twisting serpent, and he will slay the dragon that is in the sea. So it appears that in the Bible, Leviathan is the name of the creature, not the actual, like, it's not a species. So
it's like a specific name for that one.
Yeah, it's always capitalized.
Yeah.
Leviathan.
Mm-hmm.
So it also appears like he's talking about the devil or Satan or the beast of Revelation or like the dragon of Revelation. So even in Revelation, there's mention of a beast that comes out of the sea. And I, as far as I know, it's the first beast in Revelation chapter 13. You can fact check me on that, but says that the dragon stood on the shore and a beast came out of the sea, and the dragon gave authority to the beast, and he had 10 horns, 7 heads, and blasphemous name on each head. So that's
kind of scary.
So there's actually a mention in Psalm where God defeats Leviathan and crushes his heads and gives him food to quote-unquote creatures of the wilderness, which it's assumed, at least from what I read, that means the Jews that were sent to dwell in the wilderness for a certain amount of time, like 40 years or something like that, they dwelled in the wilderness.
Mm-hmm.
So later Jewish sources describe Leviathan as a dragon, but they keep going back to that he's going to be defeated in the end times and be served as food to people that God saves. So, and also along with Behemoth. So, the Book of Enoch describes Leviathan as a female monster or a dragon from the sea, and Behemoth it describes as a male monster who lives in a desert in Dunaidin, which means east of Eden. So, neat. Anton LaVey, you know who that is?
No.
He is was the leader of the Satanic Church.
Oh.
And wrote the Satanic Bible in 1969. And he said that the Leviathan represented the element of water and the direction of west, listing it as one of the 4 crowned princes of hell. And that association was inspired by the demonic hierarchy from the Book of Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage. And the Church of Satan uses Hebrew letters as each one of the points of the sigil of Baphomet and represents Leviathan starting from the lowest point of the pentagram and reading counterclockwise. The word reads, or the letters read, Nun, Tav, Yod, Vav, and Lamed as Hebrew for Leviathan. So that's kind of interesting that they would also make the connection to I guess it's the sigil of Baphomet, but they're making the connection to a demonic force there. Maybe not necessarily that it's an actual sea monster, literal sea monster that we would know of, or a dragon, but a demonic force that can still do all of those things. So, very powerful demon, I guess. So, all over in Christianity, the Leviathan kind of embodies a spirit of chaos or a concept of chaos. It threatens to eat the lost or damned souls when their lives are over. And some of the theologians that I read about have identified Leviathan with the spirit of envy, but I don't know that necessarily makes any more sense than that it would be just a satanic force or like the actual one of the beasts from Revelation. So I think, at least from what I read biblically, that it makes more sense that it would be one of the beasts than it would be just the spirit of envy. So in Norse mythology, you know a lot about Norse mythology, don't you?
I wouldn't say a lot. No.
I thought you were like a big fan.
It's cool. It's interesting.
I'm making that up.
I wouldn't say I know a lot about it.
In Norse mythology, Jormungandr is known as the world serpent, and it's an indescribably large sea serpent or worm that surrounds the earth, known as Midgard in Norse mythology. The Jormungandr is the middle child of the Norse god Loki. And Odin removed the 3 children of Loki's 3 children from Asgard and placed them on Midgard, the earth, and placed Jormungandr in the sea, where it grew so big it was able to encircle the earth, and it's biting its own tail. So one of the great signs of the coming Ragnarok, which is the Norse end times, basically is when it lets go of its tail, and then Thor is supposed to fight Jormungandr to the death. And the name Jormungandr comes from 2 words, Jormund and Gandr. And Jormund means huge or vast, and Gandr is usually associated with elongated beings or supernatural entities. But it could mean a bunch of things like serpent, river, cane, staff, or even, funnily enough, penis. It primarily associates the connotation with a being that's supernatural or like living. So the usual interpretation is a vast serpent or vast river. But I was reading that, I was like, that's what is happening? Like, why does you can't have one word that means so many different things.
Yeah. It's all about the context.
Yeah.
Context clues are crucial on that one.
I'm like, man, that's so anyway. Have you heard of Cthulhu?
Of course. We have in the kitchen, there's a little Cthulhu on the top of the cabinet. I'll show you when we go back in there.
I can't. It's not on that shelf. But
no, on the cabinet. There's a little Cthulhu, and I think there's a Cthulhu Pez dispenser in there too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Cthulhu is another popular sea monster that people are probably familiar with.
That's one of Dirk's favorites.
Created by H.P. Lovecraft in his short story, The Call of Cthulhu. He appears to be more than just a sea monster, even though I suppose that's where he's supposed to dwell, at least from what I read. He's described more so as a cosmic entity. So the pronunciation is, so I'm just going to spell this out for you. It's KHLUL-HLOO. So
that's the phonetic pronunciation that you're spelling out?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's the reason it is it's supposed the KHLUL, the first like Cthulhu, that part. The KH is supposed to be like a really deep guttural sound. And so this pronunciation is just the closest that humans can come to mimicking an alien language that his name is in. So I guess it's supposed to be like...
Oh my gosh.
Cthulhu is described as, quote, a monster of vaguely
Try again.
Cthulhu is described as, quote, a monster of vaguely anthropoid outline, but with an octopus-like head, whose face was a mass of feelers, a scaly, rubbery-looking body, prodigious claws on the hind and forefeet, and long, narrow wings behind. End quote.
What is anthropoid? What did you say?
Anthropoid.
Anthropoid
is what it's. I copied a quote is anthropoid, so that may be misspelled, but it just means like bipedal, I guess, like human-like.
Oh, okay.
Like Bigfoot is what do they call anthropomorphic or something like that?
I don't know.
So anyway, Cthulhu is said to resemble a green octopus, dragon, and a human caricature, hundreds of meters tall, with webbed, human-looking arms and legs and a pair of rudimentary wings on its back. Excuse me. Its head is depicted as similar to the entirety of a giant octopus, with an unknown number of tentacles surrounding its supposed mouth. So the short story that first mentions Cthulhu is called The Call of Cthulhu, published in Weird Tales in 1928, and has established that character as a malevolent entity hibernating within R'lyeh, an underwater city in the South Pacific. The imprisoned Cthulhu is apparently a source of constant subconscious anxiety for all mankind and is also the object of worship by some cults in the story. It's pretty neat. So we're like starting a cult, I guess.
Don't say that.
There's a ton of other sea monsters out there that I could get into, but I wanted to do some of the like ancient and spooky ones first.
Yeah.
So that's kind of we haven't really delved into any of those yet, but I mean, like I could go on about like Loch Ness Monster style or sea serpent style or whatever, that there's a million different stories about it.
Yeah.
So
like when you did your cryptid from every state and they were in different categories.
Yeah, there was like 13 different
like
sea monsters.
Bigfoot types, monster types.
I rank them.
Flying type. Yeah.
So are sea monsters real?
Yeah.
I didn't expect you to answer that, but I'm glad you did, because I wrote in my notes, well, sorta.
I mean, we can't say they're not when so much of the ocean is undiscovered. Unexplored.
Yeah.
I should say. Not undiscovered, but unexplored. We don't know what's down there.
Fair, I guess. I wonder how much of the ocean is just like water. Like,
I mean, a lot of it, but
100% of the ocean is water, right? But
you mean like with nothing else in it, just water?
Yeah, it's just like there's a big open chasm that like maybe every once in a while something swims through, but it's like stuff doesn't really live there necessarily. Like not like on a coral reef that has,
Yeah, I feel you.
Anyway, have you heard of the Kraken?
Yes.
Hmm.
Big fan of the Kraken.
You are?
I
Like
mean-
the cereal? Or
The Kraken cereal?
no, I'm thinking of Craze. Spelled
Yeah.
with a K. Never mind.
Yeah.
That's totally, completely not even close.
Not related.
Kraken is a legendary sea monster, similar to a gigantic squid or an octopus. It is said to appear in the sea between Iceland and Norway. So they believe the Kraken myths originated due to sights of actual giant squids or giant octopi, like actual real sightings.
I feel like giant squids, like the real animal, I would call those sea monsters. Those things are crazy looking and they're humongous.
You let me get into it.
No.
No, I'm glad you said that because they legitimately are. And as it,
Yeah, they're huge.
it's down here somewhere, but like there's been stories of giant squids that have supposedly attacked shipping vessels or, have been hauled in and like they
Yeah.
grab onto men or whatever, which,
Have you seen all the stories in the news lately of the orcas working together to attack boats?
no.
Yeah. It's like a planned effort. Like they come in their pods and they're attacking these boats.
Why?
I don't know. I think it's because there's so much noise pollution from the boat engines now that like whales can't really communicate anymore. And I think they figured it out and they're taking down the boats one by one. Anyway, we can come back to that. Back to the giant squids. Yeah, they attack ships.
It was first described in 1700 by Francesco Negri as a subject of sailor stories and mythos, but in 1734, Hans Egede, as opposed to Hans Spaghetti, inventor of spaghetti, Hans Egede described it in detail, comparing it to the Hafgufa of medieval stories, which that was thought to be a sea monster, but modern scientists have discovered that it probably originated from whale feeding patterns, specifically the trap feeding. So, do you know what trap feeding is?
No.
So, apparently, whales will work in teams and they will corral fish into like a specific, because fish are trying to run away from the whales when they're like circling and stuff. But a whale will sit vertically with its mouth like half in and half out of the water.
Oh.
Or like multiple whales will do this and they'll corral it into their mouths and they'll like take turns doing that. So kind of weird, but if you see like a picture of it, it looks like it's like stupid looking kind of. It's like one of those like, the South Park characters that are Canadian and they have like the disconnected heads or whatever.
I don't know. I didn't ever watch South Park.
Oh,
Sorry.
my God.
I'm sorry.
It looks like that, but it's a whale anyway. So it looks like a Muppet. What I'm trying to say, it looks like when you open a Muppet's mouth and it's like like a L shape. So
I just looked up why the orcas are attacking boats.
Mm-hmm.
And it was posted like a day ago. Scientists think it's just a new like fad. Like it's just fun for them. It's a new way for them to play. And they're teaching it to each other.
Might be.
Yep. So that's scary.
Interesting.
They just think it's fun.
Yeah. First descriptions are usually credited to the Danish bishop
Try again.
Pontoppidan, who was the first to describe it in 1753 as an octopus of enormous size, which had a reputation for pulling down ships. So that's describing the Kraken there. So, Japetus steenstrup, formerly named the giant squid Architeuthis dux, from a fragment of material that was recovered near the Bahamas, and then named a second species, Architeuthis monachus, based on a preserved beak that was washed ashore in Denmark. Later in the 1860s, a French ship, the Electon, encountered a live specimen, and Captain Frederick Boyer described it as a giant squid. The captain had heard reports of giant squids, and bits and pieces of washed ashore the scientific communities had discounted its existence. So Captain Boyer was naturally determined to capture a squid and order the men to fire muskets, launch harpoons, try to catch it in a noose. And the bullets, they said, seemed to do little damage to the rubbery skin on the squid, and it was so heavy that when they tried to pull it aboard, the body was torn in twain, and only the tip of the tail was left. The entire thing measured an estimated 18 feet from tip to tail, not counting the legs, and the quote-unquote tail part was hauled aboard and later examined by scientists. Well, a fragment of it was examined. It was never determined if that big part of the tip of the tail remained preserved, even as early as like a year later. They just weren't sure where it went. The captain said he weighed it to be 14 kilograms, which is about 30 pounds. But it's not really clear how big that whole tail piece was. So when I read that, if I hear anything in kilograms, I'm like, man, that's huge. Because kilograms are bigger than pounds. But I have to remember that it's sometimes like it's almost double pounds. You know what I'm saying? So
okay.
To like within a certain range, like anything under 100 is like somewhere near double-ish pounds. So anyway.
So it was 30 kilograms?
14 kilograms.
Oh.
30 pounds.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's interesting to see like that story is odd because they just had they said the tip of the tail, but it's like, so what does that mean? You know?
Yeah.
It's like,
that's kind of vague.
Yeah. So like, how big is the tip of the tail? How big was the tail? First of all, how big was the body? 18 feet, right? So like, I don't know. I just wish I had more information on like what the actual piece was that they had in hand. But that story would later inspire the squid attacking the submarine in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which was written by Jules Verne. And he also wrote Journey to the Center of the Earth. Both
are good books.
Well, one of them was a movie, so probably the better one, right?
I think they were both movies. Weren't they? Were they not?
Giant squid were officially confirmed and recorded. Giant squid weren't officially confirmed and recorded until the 1870s, when 2 specimens were discovered in Newfoundland. First, a hacked-off limb of a giant squid who, quote-unquote, attacked a fishing boat. And later, a more famously photographed intact specimen was pictured draped over a sponge bath. So now there's newfound credence given to the stories that are older of sailors seeing giant squid in the water or being attacked by on their boat or, you know, whatever it is. So that's pretty interesting. There's actually a time in the 19th century when every new fragment or every new specimen was coined and given a new species name. And there ended up being some like 20 odd new species of giant squid. Newer studies have shown that it's actually just one globally distributed species. And they went back to using the first available and first attributed name, Architeuthis dux. It's not exactly clear why a giant squid would wash up on shore, or really why they would grab onto fishing boats either. Attempts to see a live giant squid in its natural habitat were largely unsuccessful. There were several multi-million-dollar expeditions to try to see one live and in person in the 1990s. But those were all unsuccessful. In fact, it wasn't until 2012 when both remote camera and manned submersibles caught images of giant squids in their natural habitat. So, total number of recorded specimens, unclear if that is just the pieces recovered or that includes the live specimens, now runs into the hundreds. So I think it's like 700 plus. It's been notoriously known as the most elusive creature in natural history.
That's so cool. I like that it's sneaky. It's funny.
One other thing I think is good to point. Yeah, no, it is very cool. They're extremely smart, and I'll get into some of that here in a little bit.
Okay.
So, one of the other things I think is a good point to bring up is from a video that I was watching on research for this is giant squid and octopi. They're thought to dwell in deeper, darker parts of the ocean. So I suppose they can go towards the surface and kind of just wherever they please. Kind of like whales that dive super deep, but they obviously are coming up for air and all that. But the specimens that are caught up in fishing nets or pulled aboard by boats or wash up on shore are, for the most part, like sick, emaciated ones in poor health or the dumb ones. So,
yeah,
like ones that aren't really in their right minds, I guess, so to speak, as far as you can speak about a squid being in its right mind.
Yeah.
Which, did you know, for octopuses and octopi, and for squids, I think for squids also, their brains extend into their arms. So their arms are like, I think like something like half or 80% or something of their brains.
Yeah.
Total, like the total brain that's in them. So, pretty neat.
I'm going to ask you potentially a really dumb question, okay?
You could have just said you were going to ask me a question. But
all right, so like whales are mammals, so they come up and breathe oxygen.
Yes.
They don't breathe the water.
Yep.
They can just hold their breath for a long time.
Uh-huh.
But octopi and squids are not mammals, correct? They're fish.
Or
what? What?
They're cephalopods, I guess.
Cephalopods. Okay, so they have gills. They breathe water. They don't have to come up for air. I know somebody's like, this is so stupid, but I'm not sure of the answer. Because like, you see those videos of an octopus like at an aquarium escapes and it's like crawling down the hallway because it gets out of its tank. So is it just holding its breath that whole time? Or does it breathe water and air?
Okay, so they are cephalopods.
Okay.
They're a member of the molluscan class Cephalopoda, such as Jeez.
That was not my phone. That was yours.
I was saying geez to me. Squid, octopus, cuttlefish, or nautilus. These exclusive marine animals are characterized by bilateral body symmetry, a prominent head, set of arms and tentacles modified from the primitive molluscan foot.
What do they breathe?
What does a cephalopod... Hang on. Working my Google muscles. 1 second. Talk while I do it.
I guess I could help you instead of just...
I have it pulled up already.
Sitting here watching you. I'm just going to put... Does an octopus breathe air? I
have it first. Octopi inhale by sucking water into the mantle cavity. Google what's a mantle cavity. As water flushes over their gills located inside the mantle, little blood vessels called capillaries pull dissolved oxygen from the water and deliver it to the octopi's body. So, and this is a secondary question. Do squids breathe air or water? Squids use oxygen from seawater for respiration. So
it, like, from what I'm seeing, they can be out of water for a little bit.
Yeah.
Just not indefinitely. They have to get back in the water to breathe.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all I wanted to know.
Okay. Gills are actually pretty cool to look at. I don't know if you've ever seen like a...
No, they're gross.
Gills close up or anything.
They're icky.
Anyway, It's likely that we've only seen a handful of actual squids in their normal habitat behaving the way that they normally would, and even only then for short periods of time, not really long enough to observe the way they actually act or really much of their normal activities. They're probably like I don't know, what would you call like walking for an octopus? I guess you could. Or like a squid, like do they kind of just glide? They'll probably like glide on down to the liquor store, pick up a pack of cigarettes.
Oh my gosh.
Smoke 8 at a time. Just could you imagine? Like
The octopus smoking
Yeah.
8.
Smoking 8 cigarettes at a time. Somebody make that into art.
I'm sure it exists. That's funny.
What about some of the more unknown phenomena that go on in the ocean?
Tell me about them.
Can you name any off the top of your head?
Of the more unknown ones?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's because they're unknown.
Right, yeah.
Huh. Imagine. So funny how that works. In 1997, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association, NOAA, as it's referred to, doing a study on volcanic activity using hydrophones, which is very sensitive underwater microphones that were placed more than 3,000 kilometers apart. And they recorded an extremely loud and powerful sound, which I will play for you now.
Oh, gosh.
That was it. Did you hear it?
The bloop?
Exactly, the bloop. Okay, listen.
I was kind of scared when you played that.
They recorded multiple instances of that noise and the unique sound characteristic that became known as the bloop.
The bloop!
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I remember seeing this on the notes. The bloop. I've been so curious what this was. Oh, yay. Okay, good.
So scientists from... wait, what? The
bloop on our Google Doc.
Yeah.
The bloop.
But I didn't... Well...
I've just been excited to learn what the bloop was because I saw it on the notes and didn't know.
I planned originally to do like mini episodes on this.
Yeah.
Like the bloop would be its own. And then the next thing that I'm going to talk about after this was going to be its own. And then the thing after that was going to be its own.
That's okay.
But now I've got a Thalassophobia episode that I can cover everything Spookville in the ocean. And we never have to talk about it ever again. So it's good. Scientists from NOAA's Pacific Marine Environment Laboratory, PMEL, were eager to discover the sound's origin, but with about 95% of the ocean unexplored, the theories abounded. As they say, I like that word, abounded. So, was the bloop from secret underwater military exercises, or was it ship engines, or fishing boat winches, or giant squids, or whales, or some sea creature unknown to science? What do you think?
Sea creature.
We're getting back to it in a minute. In 2001, an interview with CNN, NOAA's Christopher Fox said he believed the noise to be from ice calving.
Ice calving?
Yeah, so the icebergs break off of, like, they shear clean off of the cliff.
Leaving?
It's called calving.
Oh.
CALVING.
Right word.
It's like hanging there on the ocean, and it just shears off the front of the...
And just sinks.
Goes in the water. There's actually a crazy video if you look on the Thalassophobia subreddit, where there's some people in small boats, like motorboats or whatever, near some glaciers, and one of them breaks off, and there's a gigantic wave that's coming, and they're like, it looks like an action movie. They're like running away as fast as you can.
I've seen that.
And it's like the boats aren't fast enough.
Yeah.
So crazy. Anyway, in 2002, he said another interview that he didn't believe it to be man-made, like submarine or a bomb. And he also go on to state that while the characteristic of the sound recording resembles something an animal would make, it's far too loud to be any creature that we know of. In fact, the recording was picked up by a bunch of different sensors. Those microphones were placed more than 3,000 kilometers apart. So the sensors that picked it up were actually more than 4,800 kilometers apart, which would be way too far for it to be a whale or another animal. At least that we know of. Ooh, spooky.
Creepy.
Yep. If the bloop were an animal, assuming similar noise-making capability to a blue whale, which can grow as big as about 80 feet long, did you know that?
Yes.
The bloop would have to be over 250 feet long.
That's insane. So it's probably not an animal.
Well, what in the ocean could be that big?
Tell me.
There's something that's been a source of horror for divers, and there's some lore around it.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of the black carpet?
No.
Also from our list.
Yeah, I've only know the name from the episode list, but I don't know what it is.
I can only imagine Hannah looking through some of the things that I've put on there and being like, what are we doing?
Yeah. I mean, the bloop.
What's happening? So, the black carpet is a huge mass comprised of millions upon millions of feelers, described as a colony organism like a gigantic moving coral that crawls along the seafloor and sifts nutrients. Some of its stories that I'm about to get into are from 4chan, like green text stories, so bear with me. But so
oh no,
where some of this comes from. There saw a video where it's like screenshots of like the 4chan thread, and evidently like somebody posted a link in the Reddit subreddit for like paranormal or Thalassophobia or something, and they were like, hey, somebody have a link to this thread? And it doesn't exist anymore. So the only known existence of this thread that I know of is this one video that it's got one of those like AI readers that are reading through the thing. So anyway, one guy said that his diving buddy saw it swimming or riding the current. So it does apparently do more than just crawl along the ocean floor. It's also kind of similar to a jellyfish, but it has at least one and possibly more long feeler strands that can sting.
Ew.
One diver also said that he saw it consuming an entire decomposing sperm whale, but they say it shares more similarities to a starfish or sea anemone than a jellyfish. How do I say sea anemone first time? First time, and there's normal words I can't do.
That's a good question. I'm not convinced that you did say it right. We'll have to listen back on the
sea anemone.
Yeah, that was good.
Sea anemone. This is like the Nemo episode, like the Nemo Finding Nemo movie, where he's like the anemone. Yeah. That's me saying normal things.
I was gonna say on the regular words.
Yeah. There's been the theory tossed around that the black carpet is one of the very first invertebrate species to exist. And one of the reasons that so many huge invertebrates are in the ocean is because that's where life first evolved. So it's said that there's likely more, it's more likely that starfish and jellyfish evolved from this thing than the other way around. So one Finnish diver said he was on a dive to repair some kind of cable. When they went down, he couldn't find it, and he thought he was in the wrong place, but after some looking around, he found one end, just one, sheared clean through, told his dive buddy to hold that end while he swam a half a mile away until he found the other end, also sheared clean through. But the entire half-mile section that he swam was completely missing. Everyone thought that it was the Russians or Chinese or something, but he was sure it was the black carpet thing, and even claimed to hear the noise that it makes even though he never saw it.
What noise does it make?
Bloop. I'll play it for you.
Oh, the bloop. Okay. I forgot that these were connected. Okay, yeah.
That noise. Okay. That actually comes from NOAA. So like on the NOAA website, they have the recording that you can download there and listen to. So there is another diver in an undisclosed location doing an undisclosed like activity. Says he was quote unquote really deep. Started to hear this noise that gets associated with the sea carpet a lot. Kind of like the bloop or an ultra low pitch distorted whale song. And as he got deeper, he heard what sounded like static. And as he got even deeper, it sounded like millions of prawns all getting cracked open at once. And he thought it was a submarine crew playing a trick. Well, he gets near the bottom and shines a light around and notices the entire ocean floor has come to life and is crawling past him. So this is about the best description that we had of the black carpet. It's at least a mile long, almost completely covered in sand and other debris with black feelers poking through, and some transparent kind of stalks that float upward. It said some of them were 20 feet long at least, and the feelers made a popping sound. And he said it was quote unquote singing. And then the guy in the story says, which doesn't make any effing sense to me, but whatever. So that's how I feel like reading some of these stories. It's like, doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, but okay.
But it's going in the notes.
Yeah.
So this next one is apparently a diving urban legend the divers have been telling back and forth for a long time. A submarine crew is doing something, either wargaming or training or patrolling for Russian, Chinese, other bad guys. Story changes every time it's told. They're not using active sonar because they want to remain undetected. So while they're floating dead, is what they call it, they're not using anything active. They're floating dead. That's when they start to hear crackling noise. It gets louder and louder, and the sensors they're using to listen for other subs start like distorting because it's so loud. And this thing is like messing with all the submarine crew. They can't make any sense of it. So the captain thinks it's just some kind of radar sensor jamming technology. So the captain orders a ping to be sent out to locate the other vessel that's jamming the radar. The team says, new sonar contact bearing, sir, what's our depth? The captain says it's 500 meters or whatever is supposed to be the depth of the submarine. And the sonar guys say, sir, sonar is telling us the seafloor is only 10 meters below us.
What?
So the captain is like, that's nonsense, grabs the nautical charts for where they are and checks the sonar reading, and somehow the ocean floor has gotten hundreds of meters shallower. So the captain orders another sonar ping. The ocean is getting deeper, and then it's at normal depth, and the sonar operators assume equipment malfunction, so the captain orders another ping. And there's a very large dot on the radar behind them moving away and taking the sound with it.
So something swam under them.
Or crawled with feelers.
Or crawled.
Something. Another diver is using underwater rovers. Claims to have been using this rover to study volcanic activity when he noticed churning sediments and black feelers. So he maneuvered the rover towards that, and it grabbed the rover with one of its long stalk filler things in the blink of an eye, and it swallowed it whole. There is no video footage, which was fishy, and the guy said that the video for the rover is stored locally on the rover. It doesn't get recorded to another place, which, again, doesn't make any effing sense, but whatever. So, there's some other stories of a creature called the hide. It's pretty similar to the carpet, but it has eyes all around the rim. It's about the size of a large cowhide, hence the name.
Ew,
and it was observed by a diver floating up off the seafloor to eat a shark that was paralyzed by it.
The hide paralyzed a shark and ate it?
Yeah, keep up.
Ew.
Some similar stories could be attributed to large siphonophores that live in the deep sea, hiding on the seafloor, camouflaged with long, transparent feelers sticking up that can be paralyzing to their prey. And actually, there's a story of a diver touching one of these and being paralyzed. So he gets kind of like sucked in by one of these things, and I don't remember if he was pulled out or not. So maybe he was siphoned.
Oh, that's what a way to go. Get siphoned
by a siphonophoria.
Gross.
Yeah. So another diver who saw a large, transparent, stinging feeler sticking up from a drop-off, looked around and saw a huge sea monster of basic description to a siphonophore, but he said there was no beginning and no end to it.
What?
So now he goes around saying that, quote, he came within a hairbreadth of devourment by a gargantuan sea leviathan of unfathomable proportion, end quote. So I suppose a siphonophore of this size could exist. They're like, the thing with the siphonophores is they just sit there. There's no energy cost at all for them to just sit there at the bottom of the seafloor, and they have their little feeler that sticks up, and it paralyzes prey, and they just swim up to eat it and drag it back down, and then they just sit there again. So, and it's unclear because like some of these sea creatures can live for, hundreds of years probably. I mean, you've got like what's the gigantic tortoise or whatever that has lived for like 150 years or something like that. So it's not, and there's like an old coral that's, they say has been there for since ever. Like million-year-old coral or something like that. But so I suppose it's reasonable to believe that if these things could live long enough, that they could just keep growing because there literally almost is no energy consumption from, they're not active predators. So it's kind of disturbing in a way, honestly.
Yeah, I agree.
So anyway, there's more dive stories because they're spooky. So apparently if you work for a diver or work as a diver long enough, you're bound to run across the ultra superstitious types that believe in everything from sea monsters to ghost stories to black luck and curses. One of the more popular ones is the story of Davy Jones. It's kind of a sea deity, god, demon kind of thing. Among those stories, and he lurks on the ocean looking for sailors and divers who have displeased him for one reason or another. So some divers claim to just see footprints which are as long as the divers are tall. And one guy actually claimed to see Davy Jones describing him as a 200-foot tall humanoid, but didn't see his face, which is good, because seeing his face would mean instant death, as, quote, his visage is too horrifying for any mere human to behold.
Get wrecked.
Imagine being called ugly like that.
Yeah.
The worst she can say is no. Your visage is too horrifying for any mere human to behold.
Poor Davy
Jeez.
Jones. That's harsh.
I guess that makes sense because isn't the Davy Jones guy in the Pirates of the Caribbean and he has the octopus mustache or something?
Yeah, gross. The beard.
Pretty neat.
Kind of gross.
I sort of wish I had an octopus mustache.
Ew, don't say that.
Then, like, you know how I get food stuck in my beard all the time?
Yeah.
Just.
Ew, you're making me nauseous.
My octopus beard could, like, just pull up and put little crumbs in my mouth.
Stop.
What?
That's gross.
What else would you use an octopus beard for?
Stop saying octopus
Never mind.
beard.
Forget I said that.
I'm getting grossed out.
So, octopus beard. Some of these stories, some of these ghost story tales could be described by a natural phenomenon. Have you heard of narcosis?
Yes.
From the list?
Maybe.
It's on the list. Nitrogen narcosis is a condition caused by the
I've heard of
extreme
the bins.
pressure. No, wrong.
Oh, different?
Different.
Okay.
Nitrogen narcosis is caused by the extreme pressures underwater, especially the deeper you go. Basically, you're breathing in inert gases from tanks. They use like a mixed gas kind of thing. I'm not a dive expert, so I couldn't tell you exactly what's going on, but basically the tanks, the nitrogen is being breathed in, and that the pressure changes the way your body processes these gases, and the nitrogen ends up getting into your central nervous system and being processed there. And the exact mechanism and the causes are still being studied and debated, but basically makes you see things that aren't there. Actual symptoms are euphoria and light impairment and anxiety. And they could go as bad as hallucinations, terror, and death. So
not fun.
The bins that you were talking about is when you've got air in your body.
Yeah, if you try to
you go up too fast, and so there's safety spots on the way that divers will kind of sort of note while they're going down. Way up. So the bins can also be deadly if it's not treated. So you actually, to treat it, they take them basically like life flight you to a pressure chamber and then slowly release the pressure until you're normal again. There's people that have had like terrible like joint issues because the air gets weird and like bad like brain aneurysms and stuff like that, I think. So it's, yeah, no good. Anyway, one story from kind of a hobby diver who took off looking on the bottom of a lake for different little valuables and oddities when he got a sudden feeling he was being watched. Ooh, spooky. He turned around and saw a man standing there who smiled at him and waved. And that's when he recognized him as his own father, who was dead.
What?
And he kept pointing at his oxygen regulator and trying to say something, but he couldn't understand what he was saying, and all that would come out of his mouth was bubbles, because it's underwater.
That's scary.
So he basically figured, like, he was like, oh, I see what's going on. Like, I'm hallucinating, obviously, but that doesn't stop the hallucinations, so...
Right.
You know. There was a guy that was going to investigate a disturbed pod of whales that gets pulled in by the black carpet. So they, the way the story goes was that there was a diver who was studying these whales, kind of had names for them, and they were sort of disturbed, and so he was like, what's going on? And they kept like getting kind of rowdy on their whale songs or whatever. And he eventually went to investigate what was going on because he didn't see him for a while. And then they came back and they were mad. And so he went down and they were trying to nudge him back up to the surface, like, don't go down here. Ooh. And so he went down and ended up getting paralyzed by the black carpet and getting sucked into the black carpet. And the whales freed him and pushed him back up to the surface and basically waited there and defended him until he could regain consciousness. And then he said that the black carpet evidently wasn't very happy about the whales stealing his lunch because salmon started to float to the top of the ocean. So the black carpet was not eating salmon that it was killing. It was just killing salmon. And the whales would refuse to eat the dead salmon.
That's insane.
So, yeah, crazy. One diver went on a body recovery dive in fresh water. Some kind of like drinking with no life jacket kind of situation, I guess. He gets down to the bottom and sees a man who looks fresh, for lack of a better term, covered up to the shins in silt. He ties off to him and starts heading for the surface. Notices his tether is still being pulled at extremely high speeds. He tries to grab the rope out of instinct, and his hand gets cut on the rope because it's going so fast. He gets like a burn from it, and it cuts clean through his glove and his skin. He's like suddenly gets like a brain blast, and he's like, "Oh, I'll cut the straps that are holding my tether to me." And just in time, he cuts it, and it gets sucked down to the bottom. And he's convinced that the whiplash from being yanked with that amount of force would have broken his back and killed him.
Ooh.
And everyone said it was nitrogen narcosis. But if it was just a hallucination caused by the nitrogen narcosis, how did he get the cut on his hand?
Yeah.
Even the doc said it was too blunt to be his knife. Mm-hmm. And there were friction burns around it. And he didn't have his tether thing.
Yeah.
So
the story adds up.
One interesting story was of a diver working in the Pacific inspecting a marina and swam to the bottom to inspect where there were anchoring chains on like these big rocks. And upon inspection, found one of these rocks looked suspiciously unrock-like and soft and squishy when he was touching it. And it flashed white and disappeared in a cloud of ink. Ooh,
what?
So it turns out it was a giant octopus. Like we talked about earlier, except kind of less serial killer-like. Less Kraken-esque, I guess. More prankster, because on subsequent dives, the diver encountered his friend a bunch, and he even named it Frederick. Frederick would be disguised as all manner of weird things at the bottom of the sea. And after a while, he just assumed that anything that stood out as weird was Frederick, and he would ignore him, and then Frederick would tickle the back of his head or mess with his equipment. And on one occasion, turned off his oxygen for a second and turned it back on, and that prompted the diver to never ignore him again if he can turn off his air.
Yeah. At least say hello.
So he would even bring toys down for Frederick to play with. And so he would go down and wave hi, and Frederick would wave hi back with his tentacles.
That's really cute.
So there was a while he said that he didn't see Frederick for a few weeks. And then he went down again, inspecting the same anchoring chains that he saw before. And Frederick was there, but he wasn't camouflaged like a rock. And he went and he waved at Frederick, and Frederick waved back and flashed white, but he turned back red and had white splotches all over him. And he was like, well, that's kind of weird. And then as he kept going down, he would just get less and less active, and then suddenly he didn't see him anymore. And so as it turns out, giant octopus are, there's a word for it, but they only mate once. The males die after they mate.
Oh.
So Frederick became a dad.
Well, that's bittersweet that he became a dad, but then had to die.
Yeah. So black divers. Have you ever heard of those? From the list? So
no.
Black divers is another phenomena that partly can be explained by nitrogen narcosis, but here's a story for you. So diver goes down on some kind of like oil rig or some kind of investigatory mission, and sees his dive buddy there, because they always dive in pairs. And he said that the equipment that they were using a rebreather. So the rebreathers, you would it siphons through like your different like situation with your oxygen. They said it's like the best at the time to use, so that all they had was the rebreathers. And so he sees his dive buddy there, and he gives him the okay sign that he's doing good, and the other guy gives him the okay sign. But he was like, something about the way he did that seemed wrong. Can't explain it. Something about that wasn't very Uncanny Valley-esque.
Right.
And so then he like feels a weird kind of feeling, and he turns back around, and there's still his dive buddy standing there or floating there in the water, and he gives him the okay symbol. And this time it was like even worse. It was really like,
that's making me feel scared.
Just wasn't right.
Oh, and you're underwater, and you can't just like get out right away.
Yeah. And so he just starts feeling weird, and he's going to swim over to him, and I'm getting like chill bumps as I'm telling this. It's so creepy.
Spooked.
And he swims over to him, and as he's swimming, he gets this really intense sense of fear and dread.
Oh no.
And he gets to he's swimming over, and he realizes his dive partner has a regulator. And the regulators, when you breathe, so they're using rebreathers, I think is the way that I've got this right. And when you breathe, they don't make any bubbles because you're recirculating this air. But he has a regulator, which as you breathe makes bubbles. And he's not making any bubbles.
Oh my God.
So then he's like, this is definitely wrong. And if there's something wrong with this guy's equipment, then I need to get him out of here.
Yeah, so like first of all, it's not his dive buddy, and second, he's not breathing.
Yeah. And so he goes up to him, and he chill bumps. I was scared. And he grabs onto him, and he's not.
Oh, I'm so scared.
And he's not right, and he touches his mask.
Ew.
And his head just squishes in, and he realizes there's no one in the mask. There's no one in the suit.
What?
It's just pitch black in the suit.
What in the world?
And then that guy, the dive buddy or whatever you want to call it, disappears in ink.
I'm sorry. What?
Next story. No.
That's crazy.
So, possible narcosis can kind of explain certain amount of that.
Maybe.
The hallucination. But people have said it's also could be a squid or octopus, because they can do this thing. It's incredible if you see videos of it. I've seen videos where they change pattern if you have like a checkerboard or something.
Yeah.
And where it's like black and white squares.
Yeah.
They can change their camouflage to that, like a pattern like that.
So it could have been like a really advanced octopus or squid.
Well, could have been a really advanced form of their active camouflage that they use. And they can even change, it almost seems like they can change their texture at will.
Yeah, like to match coral and rocks and stuff.
And so it's possible that an octopus just wanted to investigate, or a squid wanted to investigate I guess it'd be an octopus. I think they're better at the active camouflage thing. So an octopus wanted to investigate the divers, but he didn't want to like spook them. So he tried to be like what a diver looks like and give the okay sign, but it's like a tentacle.
Oh, okay. That's kind of cute.
Yeah. Shut up.
It went from being scary to being cute. He just wanted to let in.
There are two types of these black divers. There's I put the types as a skull and not skull. So the one that I just told you, the guy doesn't have there's nothing in the mask, and it's just black, pitch black. There's nothing in there, and some of them they see a corpse or a skull in there.
Ooh, don't like.
That's almost worse.
That's definitely worse.
So I did take a few screenshots of some of these that I also wanted to read, and we're getting to the end of the episode here, so stay tuned. Now, listen. They raise nets out of on these fishing vessels that have all these fish in here, but the further deep you cast your nets, you pull out fish have you ever seen those, like they call it like a blobfish or something?
Yeah.
Those fish look semi-normal-ish, I think, at the bottom of the ocean where they live.
Right, when they're in the right pressure.
Pull them up, the pressure just makes them turn to a blob.
Yeah.
So the story is that they're pulling deep-sea nets out of the ocean, and they pull up all these fish that have almost human-like faces, and they're screaming.
Oh.
And they're screaming.
Because they're dying, because they're out of they're not the right pressure.
And but they look like humans.
I don't want to see it.
So I don't have a picture of it, don't worry.
Okay, good.
So, and they like immediately threw them back overboard, and they never did deep sea netting again.
Yeah, no.
So,
ugh, that's horrible.
Another one was that I took these all sideways, but then you try to turn your phone sideways, and it makes it not sideways again. That's irritating. I don't like that. So this diver took a group of trainees out on a dive, like a practice dive or something, and they get this thing that's called what they call the call of the deep in diving. And this kid went to the edge of this cliff, because there's places in the ocean where it's just a sheer drop off, right? So he gets to the edge of this cliff, and he's just staring down into the deep, dark chasm that's in the ocean. And the diver goes up to him. He's like, "Hey, you okay?" He's like, "Yeah, I was just looking down here." And they're like, "Well, we're heading up." He's like, "I'll be there in a second." And so he kind of backs off a second. He's watching him, and then he darts down into the deep chasm. And the diver is wants to go down and rescue him, but he reaches him about 30 meters later and grabs his foot, and the guy kicks him off, and he's looking at him, and he smiles like ear to ear.
Ew.
And then just keeps swimming down.
Ew.
The diver said that he obviously couldn't save him underwater, because he would end up running out of air and dying too.
Mm-hmm.
So he went back up, and evidently they never recovered the body of that kid.
That's horrible.
So it's no good.
That freaked me out more than any story you've told tonight.
Yeah. So, kid's body was never found. So, there's a guy who does the treasure hunting thing again. Like I just was telling you that guy does kind of like a treasure hunting thing that he was just looking for like oddities and stuff, saw a hallucination of his dad who had passed away a few years earlier. This guy's doing treasure hunting in the ocean. And he's looking on radar and he sees this thing that's like jutted out of the ocean. And he's like, I'll go down there and look. And it's a boat. And he gets to it and it's almost like an old wooden boat looking thing. But he gets to it and he feels like this weird sense of, he's like, something about this boat isn't right. He gets to it and it doesn't feel like normal wood. It's petrified. It feels like stone, but it looks like wood. And there's a door, like a normal looking, modern looking door in the side of the hull of the ship. And he's like, tries to get it open and he feels this, as soon as he reaches for the doorknob, or like the lock or whatever, he feels this intense sense of dread and he's like, I have to get out of here. I have to get out of the water. I cannot be here anymore. And he gets to the top and then he realizes, he's like, who would put a modern door on the side of a hull of a ship?
Right. And
that was no good.
Yeah.
So it's that's not a great one.
That's really weird. That's a weird one.
Yeah. So that's pretty much all of the creepy stories that I have for you for
this was a good episode.
Thalassophobia. There's a lot of stuff. We jumped around a lot.
Definitely the scariest part for me was the kid swimming down into the deep.
Yeah.
I don't like that. That's terrifying.
Yeah. So that's the last of our Thalassophobia episode. Got some history, got some sea monsters, paranormal stuff.
A little bit of everything.
A lot of topics that we like to cover on Country Roads Creep.
Something for everybody.
I wanted to hear your thoughts, and then I expected this to be a little bit longer of an episode. I didn't know we were going to run on this long, but I want to hear your thoughts before we sign off.
Two quick ones. The call of the deep.
Yeah.
That there's something similar that happens on land, like when people are on a
call
ledge.
of the void.
Yeah, call of the
French
void.
word for it, and I can never remember what the French is.
Yeah. And we mentioned that in the Bridgewater Triangle episode.
Yeah.
It was like that rock that people want to jump off of.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, I thought of this really scary story, but it's like a real life thing. I cannot remember the guy's name right now. We'll have to look it up and maybe talk about it later. But there was the ship sank, and this guy on the ship found an air pocket, like a bubble of air, even though he was down. You've probably seen the video of him getting rescued, and he was underwater for 3 days.
Yeah.
And the search and rescue team thought they were just like recovering the deceased, and then they found him alive.
Yeah.
And had to bring him up in one of those pressurized chamber things because he had been down there for so long.
Yeah.
But he said where he was just in total darkness, he thought he'd been down there for maybe a day. It was actually 3.
Whoa.
That's so crazy.
Yeah. There was another thing kind of like that where there was a ship that had been hit by, it was like a war kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it had been hit and was blowing up, and a bunch of these, bunch of sailors died. But while it was collapsing and filling with water, and it burning and stuff, they heard knocking on the inside of the ship. And they thought it was just like the ship like collapsing and all this stuff going on and it like breaking apart. And it turns out there were these sailors that were trapped in there, and they ended up drowning, I think. So
I feel like that when did you say that was? Did you say?
I want to say we're like World War II or something.
I was going to say, I think it was at Pearl Harbor. That happened. I feel like I've heard that.
Maybe. I want to say that was the USS Nimitz. or something.
I looked up the name of the guy I was talking about. It's Harrison O'Keene. That was in 2013. Spent 3 days in an air bubble.
Yeah.
And there's the video of him being rescued when they find him.
Yeah. So,
That's all. Let's wrap it up. That was a good episode. Good job.
Thank you. Follow us, Instagram, Facebook, Country Roads Creeps. Leave us a 5-star review. And that's it. Be safe driving home. Watch out for the not deer.
Bye.
Bye.